Today we're going to learn how to bind off our stitches, which is how to get all your stitches off the needles without them unraveling. And we will do it one stitch at a time, and we're going to do it with knitting stitches. And I'm going to use this blue colored yarn just so that you can see what's happening a little easier. But again, you would continue on with whatever yarn you've been using on your project, but I'm going to change colors here. So to start with, you can see we've been doing knit one row, purl one row, knit one row, purl one row. So we are going to knit these stitches off the needle. So in order to do that, we need to have 2 stitches to work a bind off. So we're going to knit the first 2 stitches, and then I'll show you what to do. So you go into the stitch as if to knit. I'm going to just loop my blue over and start using the blue to knit with. But we need to have, I'm kind of coming off the screen here, sorry about that. I tend to drift while I'm knitting. So we're going to knit 2 stitches, and now to bind off, we're going to take the very first stitch that we knit and we're going to leapfrog it over the second stitch, but we don't want the second stitch to fall off. So we got to take that first stitch up and over and off the tip of the needle, but we don't want the second stitch that we knit to come off at the same time. So you're going to have to put some tension, extra tension, on the stitch we just finished in order to be able to get that other stitch up and over. And you're going to use the tip of your left hand needle to help do this. It makes it a little easier. So we're going to take this first stitch we knit up and over and off the needle. So I kind of pull down on the fabric, get my tip of my needle into that stitch, and I pull it up and over. So you can clearly see that second stitch that I'm holding on to, and then we let that first stitch drop off the tip. Let me tighten everything back up here. So now I have 1 stitch on my needle and I need to have 2. So I'm going to knit the next stitch. And then again, I'm going to take the first stitch, the one closest to my right hand, put tension on the stitch we just finished, and I'm going to grab it with the tip of my left needle, pull it up and over, and I try to do that while it's still on my needle so that I can clearly see that I have that second stitch secure, and I'm going to drop off that first stitch off the tips of the needles. So again, I have 1 stitch, I need 2, so I'm going to knit 1. I've got my 2 stitches. I need to take that first stitch up and over, pull some tension. I pull down on the fabric with my left hand a little bit, because remember we pulled pretty tight, so that stitch can be a little tighter than normal. So I pull it up and over. I can see a gap where my tip is going to come through. Right there, there's a gap. And then I slowly bring that right needle down and let it come back through. So I've caught that stitch I'm holding on to, and I've let the other stitch drop off. So I'm going to do it again. We'll knit 1. I have my 2 stitches to bind off. I grab the first stitch, leapfrog it up and over so I can really see that second stitch where I don't want it to fall, and then I slowly bring the tip of my needle down and let it fall off. You could see there some of my yarn was separating a little bit, so you really want to make sure that your yarn doesn't split like that. Grab that first stitch, put some tension on it, up and over. You can clearly see the little hole that my needle needs to come back through. And then once I have that stitch secure on my right needle, I let the that stitch fall off. And that's really all there is to binding off. I'm sorry, I keep sliding my hands off camera. Let me get them back up here. So just one stitch at a time. Take your time. You can bind off in knitting stitch, which is what we're doing here. You can bind off in purling stitch, which we've learned how to purl. And you can bind off going back and forth between knit one, purl one. So you can do all of these stitches and bind off at the same time, depending on what kind of edge you're looking for. And usually the pattern will tell you if you need to bind off in pattern. So if you were following a pattern and it said knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one, you would bind off in pattern. So you would knit one, purl one, and then take that knit stitch up and over. Then you would knit the next stitch, and then you would take the purl stitch up and over. So you can see here the edge that you get kind of looks like a crocheted chain. And we just take one stitch at a time and get it off the needle. So here I've gotten to the end of the row. You've got one stitch left, no more stitches to bind off. You need to cut your yarn, but you don't want to cut the yarn close to your knitting. You want to have some end that you can weave in later. So you want to cut your yarn. I usually cut it about 6 to 8 inches, maybe a little longer, not up close, but down further so that you can have plenty of leftover tail yarn to weave in. You cut it. And there's two ways you can pull this through. You can make the loop on your needle bigger and reach through it and pull that tail through it. You can pull the tail through it. That's one way to stop. The other way is to continue to pull and make that loop bigger and just keep pulling, and that will also lock that last stitch. So either way you do it is fine. You can reach through and grab the tail and pull it through and lock it, or you can just continue to pull that loop and make it bigger. Either way is fine. So that locks that last stitch so that they can't unravel. But you can see here, now we've gotten all our stitches off. We have a nice, neat little chain. It's just a tad tight, but that's kind of normal. And there are other ways to cast off that gives you a little bit more stretch to it. And we'll go over those in future videos. And then when you're all done, you turn it over. The purl side is usually the wrong side, and then you take a big needle, big darning needle, and you weave in your extra ends, and I usually pull them through those purl bumps, so you can do that so that you can't see it from the front. And then all your little ends where I changed colors, where I started and I had my slip knot, you weave in all those ends into the back side of your knitting. And you want to weave one way and then turn the piece around and weave the other way so it really locks it in. And we'll do a weaving in video coming up. So that is how you do a basic bind off. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment below, and we'll see you in the next one.